now that we've built our two Regwins, we have the People tab and we have the Company tab. Now that they're both built, we want to spend a little bit of time testing these Regwins and making sure that we've handled all the possible conditions and states in which this target application can be in. Now, people ask me all the time, how long does it take to create a Regwin? Well, creating a Regwin, as you can see here, we've created two in a matter of 15 minutes. Creating them is the easy part. What you want to do is you want to leave a little bit of time so that you can go through and test. Doing positive tests, making sure the Regwin is found when it's supposed to, and doing some negative tests, making sure it's not found when it's clearly not supposed to be found. And I'm going to show you how to do that now. So let me shut down the Appspace editor. We've saved. Let me just do another save to make sure. And I'm going to shut down the Appspace editor. And since we're returning from development mode, Ratchet-X is prompting us to see if it needs to reload any of the actions or app spaces which we may have changed while we were in this mode. I'm going to say no. And Ratchet-X comes up. And okay, what we want to do now is we want to load and test this app space that we've created. I'll start by clicking on the App Spaces tab. I'm going to right-click and say Add an App Space. And I'm going to choose, in this case, Browse the File System, because this is the location of my tutorial app space that we just created. Choose Browse. It's on my desktop tutorial. That's the one. Selecting that app space, confirming it, and clicking OK. And what happens is Ratchet-X loads that app space file. Here it is. It's loaded. The little green check indicates that it's found one or more Regwins. And the magic button is also an indication that this particular state of this application is a known state. We have a Regwin that covers it. So let me do a little bit of a dive into this and show a couple of other things while we're here before we move on too far. Obviously, we have the icon that we had attached in our app space file. We have the caption that has been assigned, or really the ID of the app space is shown here. And then this is the description field, and I think if we had put in something for the publisher, that would be beneath. If I right-click on my app space and go into details, we'll look at some quick details of this. This tells us exactly when it was created and whatnot. We have some information like the Regwins that are contained within it. Now, what's not obvious is that the Company tab Regwin and the People tab Regwin, those are the ones we had just created. The asterisk means the Company tab is currently found. And then there's a listing of the mappings. And the mappings are any of the X models that are mapped to that specific Regwin, or to any of the available Regwins for this app space. And the star, once again, indicates that it's currently found. Okay? So let me shut this down. And let's go up here and take a look at this magic button. When I click the magic button, it comes up and it tells me that there are no alerts available. Well, what does that mean? Well, since we have defined this Regwin, the Company tab Regwin, that's half of the puzzle, right? That's the information that Ratchet-X needs to know so that it can scan the desktop, find the window, and place the button there. But that's all we've provided so far. The next step we have to generally do is to create some type of a action that will work in conjunction with that app space. I've got a debugging Regwin that we a debugging action. I'm going to right-click here in the Action tab. I'm going to choose Add Sample. And I'm going to choose the Regwin Debugger. When I load the Regwin Debugger, this is a simple action that we have the source code to, so you can always go through this. It's a great learning tool to go through all of these samples and look at the code and see what's happening. But its very presence means that now, when I click on the magic button, instead of just getting a drop-down list with no actions, I can actually call an action. Now I can call the Regwin Debugger. Okay, so let me do that. Bring up the Regwin Debugger. And a couple of interesting things. So you can see here that there's a number of facts. This is all the same stuff that we had read in the Appspace editor. This is available at runtime just by running this simple action. You get lists of markers and snippets and clickets, which we haven't covered here, and the mapping. So let's do some testing. Let me close this down to begin our testing. Let's start with the People tab. I'm going to minimize Ratchet-X Commander. We no longer need it for configuration purposes. And let's start with the People tab and run through something. Let's see what we have. Let's debug it first. You see the same type of information. You see we have the markers that we have just created. I'll click the highlight link and say, yeah, that's the main condition, making sure the People tab is selected. That's right. Grab some snippets. I might want to highlight some snippets and make sure they seem to be right. Yep, we're resolving to the right thing. Now, in this type of testing, really what you're looking for is any kind of change in state. So it's not just a matter of testing and making sure all of these do as you'd expect. It's a matter of manipulating the application itself, the target application itself, in such a way so as to maybe put it in a different state, something we're not expecting. So I'll go to the mappings. We have an address verification mapping. I'll highlight it, see what happens. Oh, it shows me that. That's what I'm expecting. If I hit extract, you'll see all the data that we had mapped to the address verification X model is all shown here. That's all good. So this seems right. Let me do a negative test. If I go to the Company tab, well, as you can see here, everything has just become grayed out. I can no longer move around here. This is indicating that the Regimen is not found. If I go back to the People tab, it becomes enabled again. If I move around to other tabs, you'll see it stays disabled. That's all good. I bring it back to the People tab, and we're good. Okay, this is looking pretty right to me. I would certainly do a little bit more extensive testing before something like this went into production, but that's pretty right. One thing I always like to do is shut down the application and bring it up again. I'm going to close my action, and I'm going to shut down my CRM. Then I'm going to reload it. Now, the reason that you shut down an application and reload it, sometimes you might want to log in as a different user. What we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that the state that we're in is not influenced in any way by, let's say, the navigation or the order that we open things in. So I want to make sure when I open it this time, I do something different. So I open it up. It always comes up to the People tab. I'll do obviously the People tab. The People tab Regimen is found, hence the magic button. Let me just do a quick test and make sure it was still good. This all still looks right. Let me highlight a couple of nodes, make sure we still look like we're in good shape. That seems to be doing what it's supposed to. I'll do a quick extract on all the addresses that are part of it. That data looks right to me. Close this. All right, so this looks pretty good. I have navigated around different ways. I have not in this case tested with different user accounts. The only reason that might affect it is obviously different applications may be aware of the user and their privilege and maybe enable certain buttons or display certain buttons for one user that they wouldn't show for another. That's all the type of variation that you're looking for. But at this point, I think I've done a pretty good job on testing the People tab. Let's look at the Company tab. When I click on the Company tab, the magic button kind of excites. You see it kind of blink a little bit, and that's indicating that the Company tab is a known Regimen. So when I click it, I get the same list of choices. This time it says Debug Company tab Regimen. I'm going to bring that up. Okay, very good. So we've got the action. The Regimen debugger is showing us the similar information that it showed us before when we were looking at the People tab. We have markers. I'm going to click highlight to look at, yep, that's right. The main condition is that selected equals true for the Company tab, so that's right. Let me take a look at some of these snippets, and we do some tests. We grab the address line one and hit extract. Aha! Well, what we see here is we're not getting the data, we're getting some type of an exception. Now this exception is saying, if you drill all the way into it, it says connector exception, invalid screen link. Well, that's interesting. So I'm going to do a quick check on some of these others. I'll do an extract as well and see how prevalent that is. Okay, so what's going on is none of our snippets that we've created for the Company tab are working as expected. Well, that's interesting, and I'm going to show you what's going on and how to fix it. Let me hit close. And let me bring back the Appspace editor, and let's do a deeper dive into the company tab Regimen, and let's see what's wrong. Okay, so let's see what's wrong. Let's start by opening up the tutorial Appspace that we've been using. And let's take a look at the company tab. Now I'm going to start by doing a standard test here to make sure that it's found. Okay, it is found. Let me do a more elaborate test. I'm going to choose the All Screen Links test, which scans for broken snippets, markers, clickets. It scans everything with a path. Okay, so that comes up and tells me that something's broken. It lists the address anchor, and then all of our snippets. Now, obviously, all of our snippets are subordinate to the address anchor, so it's likely that what's really broken is just the address anchor. Let me click OK. And let's take a look. Now, from experience, I can tell you that from time to time you'll come across scenarios, and this is one, where the objects that are on this form get created dynamically. In other words, when the application loads and it starts at its original state, any objects like text boxes and whatnot that appear on any of the hidden tabs don't get created until the user clicks on it. So in other words, the moment I click on the Offices tab, that's the point at which this application instantiates these controls, and same thing with the other tab. And so what happens is the actual tree that gets, the node tree that gets created may be in a different order. This happens from time to time. This is one of the things that we test for and make sure we know that the nature of this tree is dynamic. If we know that, then we know we can account for it. So I guess in this scenario, by shutting down my CRM and then opening it again, and then opening up our tabs in a different order, that's what uncovered this potential problem. So what we're going to do now is we're going to fix this problem. What I'm going to do is we've determined that the address anchor is to blame. I'm going to right-click the address anchor in the grid, and I'm going to choose Compare Path. Now this is a handy utility that we provide. What it does is it brings up the existing path, and in this case this path is broken. It's not actually pointing to any individual object. And it gives us an opportunity to construct a path that points to the object where it is now. So I'm going to choose Root, and I'm going to select the address anchor. And now it has created another default path. And you'll notice in red, we see that there's a difference. So what we're doing is we're highlighting in red any difference between the two strings. So what we're seeing here is that, well, now this particular level of the tree, the object that we're looking at, the container that's holding all of our fields, has moved around. It was originally in the 4th position. Now it's in the 2nd position. And now we can fix that. You know, arguably I could choose Use Selected Path, and then it would work fine for now. But as we know, neither 1 nor 3 is actually correct. We don't want to use either because what we agree is that the order that these things appear in is dynamic based on an individual user and the order that they click them in. So we have to come up with another approach. We can't use the default path, which assumes order, and we have to put something else in. Well, that's easy to do. Let me show you how. I'm going to bring up the Advanced Path Editor. This is the same Advanced Path Editor you've seen before when we were creating our snippets and markers. And it's pointing to the current location of the object that we're dealing with. But we know that there's a problem right here. This is what we've determined, is that this level is a problem. So what I would do is I'm going to grab all of this, I'm going to hit Control-X and remove it. I'll click Refresh so I can be looking at that specific node. Okay, so that's the node that seems to change in its order. So what I want to look for is I want to find another way to define that node. Instead of finding it by virtue of saying it's the first, or in this case it's the 2nd window in the list of in the children of page tab list, instead we're going to put in what we refer to as an advanced path syntax. So this I'm going to put in name equals open single quote company. Now you'll notice I got this by looking here and realizing that, there's a name property for this node, and that corresponds to the tab name. So what I'm providing here is an alternative. So how this reads is, from root, find the first client, the first window, the first page tab list, and among its children, find the first window whose name equals company. Now you'll notice I included there's a blank space on the end. That will happen from time to time because people are using, whoever wrote it, wanted to make sure it didn't look crowded or something. But I just read it from here, so I know what it needs to be. So now I'm going to click refresh. Well, now we've found the same node. That is the same node we were just looking at. But we're not finding it purely by using its physical order. Instead, we're using something a little more advanced, and we're applying this condition to find it. I'm then going to, I guess what I could do is I could just now manually go down and find the address anchor by double-clicking on each one of these. There it is, double-click. Grouping. Okay, so I guess this is what we were looking at. Click OK. Okay, so this was our original path, and we've switched that path to use a new style. So you'll notice there's a lot of red here because we're still highlighting in red what's different. And now that I'm using this path, I always click highlight node. Could not find node. Could not find, there we go, I'm sorry. And, okay, so that is finding the proper node. I'm going to choose use selected path. And we have essentially just fixed that path. I'd like to go up here, scroll over, and make sure I see my changes. Yep, that's what we've done. We've just changed the path. And then I'd probably go in and just double-click this, bring it up in the editor, click highlight node again, make sure everything's okay. And otherwise, I'm leaving it as is. Okay, so we've solved the problem of that company tab. Now, if I go to the window and choose all screen links, now it's all good. Now, what I would do is I would shut down my CRM. I would reload it. And I would pick some other path for opening the windows before arriving at company, because that will obviously change its position again. Then I will make sure that all of my links still work properly. So there's a little bit of testing that you do like this to make sure that you're aware of all of the states in which your application is and how that might affect the location of the specific fields. After you've done a few, it starts to become obvious what those things are. For example, I always wonder about tabs. Tabs are a likely cause of some type of a change in the path. And as you can see, it's very simple to fix it. So it's just a matter of finding those breaks in the path or those changes in the tree, and then using an advanced path strategy like I did here where I use the name property instead of the ordinal position. Okay, so now that I've done that, let me choose File, Save, shut down the Appspace editor. Ratchet-X asks us if we want to reload the asset. I'm going to say yes. It will reload the changes we've just made. And now let's take a look at the Regimen debugger again and make sure it works properly now. Okay, as before, let me see if I can highlight my objects. Yes, now we look good. It's all good. Go to my mappings, do an extract. Yep. Now we're good. Now, to be on the absolute safe side, I'm going to shut down my CRM. I'm going to reload it. Choose some other order of tabs. Arriving at the company tab, and then I'm going to just make sure that this continues to work properly. Yep, that's right. Highlight. That's right. I'll put new value in here. And it looks like it's all working as I would expect. Okay, so we've just used the Regimen debugger for the purpose of testing, evaluating, making sure that our Appspace works properly. And then we went back into the Appspace editor when we isolated a problem. We fixed it using the advanced path editor and the path comparison tool. And now we're ready to move on into the creation of our action.